Yeah, I don't want to be typing while I'm.
Troy.
Yeah.
Did you want me to sort of refer to the the business benefits of diversity, the sort of lack of diversity in the management of sport, like we often talk about?
Yes, I think we are live at the moment, but yes, please, Elaine. Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
So, just want to know if we're live with an audience.
To sort of refer to the business benefits of diversity, the sort of lack of diversity in the management of sport, like we often talk about.
Yes, I think we are live at the moment. Yes, please, Elaine. Yeah, that's fine. So, sorry guys, don't say nothing yet. Let me just find out what's going on. Has anyone got a microphone on or two lives on at all?
In the management of sport, like we often talk about.
Yes, I think we are live at the moment. Yes, please, Elaine.
Oh my goodness.
Don't say nothing yet. Let me just find out what's going on. Has someone got their YouTube on? Two lives on at all? If someone's got their YouTube on, you're going to need to turn it off because it's giving us feedback in the feed. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce everybody now. We should be clear to go. And I'm going to welcome, obviously, those that are watching this via stream. So very importantly, welcome to everybody that is part of this event that hopefully will give you a little bit of understanding and brief about, the thoughts and feelings from everyone at UCFB and Kick It Out about Black Lives Matters, and also empowering the voices of young people. And we have many a powerful voice today that are going to contribute to what I hope would be a really, really important discussion, and something that hopefully everyone listening, including ourselves, will be able to take a lot away from and introduce that back into their own communities and the conversations that they will have about this period of time. It's important that I mention that the collaboration between UCFB and Kick It Out has been ongoing for a very long time now, and this is probably one of the most important things that we'll do as two organizations, bringing senior leaders together and the voices of young people, with this shared mission around promoting equality and inclusion, not just in football but in everyday life. And I think you'll find once you hear from our speakers that we have that as a kind of narrative, and that's the reason why we wanted the voices that we have today. Viewers are welcome to pass questions, and it's important that actually we do hear from you, so you are not a silent voice in this. It will be really brilliant to have questions to, and make sure that if you have a particular person that you want to direct those questions to, that you can at them as well, just to let us know who the question is for. I'll introduce our panel in a little while. But it's important as well that there's an appreciation that everybody is coming from a personal standpoint, but then also from a business standpoint as well. And I want the conversations respected, not just by those out in the audience, but also within ourselves as well. And I think that this could be something that we all really learn from, and hopefully we'll be able to push for our own channels because of the power of the voices that we have with us. There's a chat box on YouTube. So just to let you know, there's a chat box on YouTube. So when this does go out, that chat box will be visible. So please, again, keep it professional, polite, and orchestrated as well. Make sure you understand and appreciate what you are sending, the messages that you are sending out. So just a little bit about me. My name's Troy Townsend. I'm the head of development at Kick It Out. I've had a history, which is far too long, of talking about these issues. So actually today, I don't really want to talk too much. I want to leave it to the great faces and voices that I have on the screen. My role is an educational role. My role is a mentoring role. And today, my role is a moderating role where really and truthfully, I'm just pulling the lines in between the dots, and hopefully empowering you with this conversation. So without further ado, and it's important now that we give the voice to the panel, I'd like to introduce our first panelist. And what we're going to do, we're going to hear briefly about who our panelists are, and then we'll move the story on once we've introduced all 8 of them. So Ali Curtis, General Manager of Toronto FC, welcome to the platform. Is it possible to get a little brief about who you are, Ali, and in terms of obviously the conversation that we're going to have?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm the general manager of a team in Major League Soccer called Toronto FC. Before that, I was the sporting director at another club in MLS, the New York Red Bulls. And prior to that, I spent 7 to 8 years working in MLS's league office. And I've spent time working at an investment bank in JP Morgan, attended Duke University. And I'm here today, like everyone else, trying to beat the virus and stay safe and stay in quarantine and to manage through this difficult time that we're all trying to manage through.
Thank you, Ali. Really appreciate it. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. Next up, I'd like to introduce Kofi Annan, who's the founder of Africa 10. Kofi, welcome to the stage. Delighted to have you with us. Can we have a little brief about yourself, please, as well?
Yeah, I'm Kojo Annan. An entrepreneur. And years ago, I founded Africa 10, which is a social enterprise to identify, inspire, mentor the next generation of African and African descent leaders through the power of sport and education. And spent the past couple of years also working in collaboration with UCFB. And of course, Africa 10 is very integral to some of the topics we'll be discussing now during this webinar. Thank you.
Kojo, pleasure to have you with us. I may have slightly made an error there in calling you Kofi, which is obviously your father's name, and your father is a very important person, obviously. So apologies for that. Rasheen Wood, CEO of Kick It Out, my boss. So I need to keep this careful. Could you just give us a little explanation, obviously, of yourself, first of all, and why it's important that you are the CEO of the organisation that challenges racism and discrimination in English football?
Thanks, Troy. Well, I've been the CEO for nearly 9 years, so same time as you, Troy. I feel sort of coming from Northern Ireland too, sort of this issues around equality has always been important to me, and inclusion. I think, being a football fan, having a passion for that's really important. But I think, as Ali, this is a challenging time for us all. We've been doing this. We've been talking about tackling racism and discrimination in football for a long time now, myself and others before. So it's great to have this platform and to hear. I think what's important for me is to hear the future leaders of football. That's what interests me, is what are the future leaders of football? We're handing the baton on. We are. That's, we're coming to, and I want that. I want the young leaders to be really push football even further than we've ever pushed it.
Just going to let everyone know, thank you very much, Rasheen, that there may be some delays on the feed. We've got some atmospheric pressure out here in England. It seems like we have it everywhere at the moment. So just bear with us, but hopefully you will be able to get the messages that everyone is pushing out from today's webinar. And from the leaders, the last from the leaders, but probably one of the, well, they're all important, but just from a legal perspective, just in case we say anything wrong, we've got Elaine Banton with us, who's a barrister from 7 Bedford Row, a law firm here in England. I'm quite sure, Elaine, that once we've finished, everyone will be more understanding, particularly from a legal perspective, on what people think. But if you could just introduce yourself to the audience of this webinar, Elaine, that would be brilliant.
Yes, thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm Elaine Banton. I'm a barrister specialising in equalities and discrimination law and disciplinary and regulatory law, which includes sports law. I'm involved currently in many projects, including those trying to improve diversity in the field of sports law. It's something that I've been working on for years, including with Kick It Out and others, in terms of getting more diversity off the pitch and into management and boardrooms. And I'm really interested in following the brutal death of George Floyd when those commitments of equality and anti-racism have been made globally, how that can be translated into action. That's what I'm really interested in.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Really appreciate you being on and obviously working with over the last few years. Really important. That's our senior voices. That's the people who are part of a decision-making process or a legal process or an initiative process. And they're really four powerful voices. But as with everything, and I kind of align myself to young people because, you know, my age is very close to that. So I'd like to really introduce four very, very powerful young voices. It's a pleasure to know all of them. But just so that they can take some time to introduce themselves to you, I'm going to give them the stage now. So first of all, Darnell Morgan Johnson, the platform is yours for a very brief intro.
Hi, my name is Darnell Morgan Johnson. I'm a sports marketeer and I'm also a kick it out game changer.
I just knew she was going to play herself down. And when I said short intro, she actually gave me a really short intro. She has a powerful voice. We're going to hear from that, no doubt. She blew me away at an event earlier this year. So Darnell, welcome today. Georgina Stevens, again, very short, succinct intro, and we'll save all the powerful voice stuff then. Seeing as Darnell has set the tone for a little bit later on. But just give everyone a brief insight into who you are, Georgina.
I'm Georgia Stevens. I'm a footballer for Huddersfield Town, Umbro athlete and kick it out game changer, as well as a UCFB student.
Brilliant, thank you. I've obviously lost my tongue today. I'm calling people names that they absolutely are not. Georgia, I'm so sorry. Georgina is from a former life, no doubt. But yes, thank you very much for speaking up and for being part of today. I'm going to leave the guy that's laughing at me probably till the end. So Alexander, we'll go for you first. Alexander Brown, you have a different insight and a very unique insight, which I'll probably touch on quite a little bit later on, because it may understand the feeling of some of the players in the game. But just for now, just give everyone a brief intro into who you are.
Yeah, again, thanks, Troy, for getting me involved. It's a pleasure to be on this forum. Xander Brown. I'm a video producer, formerly of actually UCFB, so I'm a UCFB alumni, and I studied football business and media, which has resulted in me now being currently the content producer, video producer for the England team.
Brilliant. So you've shortened your name, Xander. So just so everyone knows, I will be calling you Xander as well, because it seems like the safe one to do. But thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, and very importantly as well, Mayowa Quodri. I always say that I'm going to get the name wrong. No doubt you'll let me know at some stage. But listen, a young man who I have the pleasure of doing some bits with recently, and a young man I know that is a very powerful voice at the moment. So could you introduce yourself to our audience, please, Mayowa?
Thank you, Troy. Thanks for having me, and loving the black shirt, by the way. My name's Mayowa Quodri. I am a kick it out game changer, and I'm also a self-proclaimed sports conversationalist who aims to have interesting dialogues about sports media across print, media, and podcasting.
Thank you very much. It's navy blue, but we won't get into the specifics of the shirt. So importantly now, you know who all are the people around my screen are. And sometimes when you cannot bring something to an audience visibly, in terms of, you know, being in the crowd, this is the next best way to do things. So no doubt we'll spark debate, no doubt we'll spark conversation, no doubt we'll, you know, get people's minds going, passion going. And I think it's important that we do that during the period of time that we have. So without further ado, Ali, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to start with you. You made a statement on the 7th of June, which I will relay some of that statement back to you. And I want to get a deeper insight into what you meant behind the statement, and what it means to you, obviously being a naturalized American, but also working in Canada and the general manager of a football club out there. So let me read back some of what you said. If we don't move forward, we're moving backwards. We need to do more. We need programming. We need targeted, direct initiatives. We can't just fly the flag when it's convenient or have 1 month to celebrate history. It can't just be putting some powerful words on the captain's armband or someone's clits or underneath the jersey. It's got to be more. We have to do more. Ali, what prompted that? Well, I think I know what prompted it, but it'd be good for our audience to know what prompted it, because there's some real important messages in what you said there. So it'll be good to get a brief insight into your own thoughts and feelings about the current state of play in America, but also how it impacts on you know, your organization, Toronto FC.
Yeah. Excuse me. Thanks, Troy. You know, that statement came from you know, about a week and a half after George Floyd's death. You know, my company, we had a webinar, and we interviewed a number of different people, and I was interviewed for about an hour long, and I spoke about my experiences in my entire life as a Black person, as a Black professional, and that just kind of came out during the call. You know, especially over the last couple of weeks, we've all had kind of, you know, the range of emotions, you know, from anger and sorrow and sadness. It's been it has been a hurricane, and you know, when you watch the video of George Floyd, you just think, you know, what has been done, and who have we become, and that's where it kind of came from. It just, you know, it wasn't something that I scripted or I drafted. It was something that, you know, I felt in that moment, and I think it's really important that I think all those things with putting out statements and having viral messages and posting on social media, those things are important. And those things will be important in helping fight systemic racism, police brutality, and all these issues that are very, very important. But it's also, I've always felt that when you look at really big things, and this is a big thing, you know, you have to have three components. You have to have vision, you have to have a strategy, and you have to have execution. And I've always felt that if you can have some success in those three core components, then you have a chance, right? But you have to do that. You have to plan. You know, you have the civil rights movement in the 60s in the United States. You know, they weren't just rolling the ball out and playing. There was actually a game plan. They thought about things in a very strategic and logical way. They wrote things down. And those things, I believe, are extremely important so that this moment doesn't flee away. We actually need to stretch this moment out for the rest of our lives. And in my opinion, I said, if we don't do something now, if we are not tactical and strategic about what we do and how we do it, then we won't have lasting impact. And so we need to be smart. We need to be strategic. We need to execute. We need to do all these different types of things such that we can really get the ball rolling. You're not going to build a house and just you go to a barren land and you just start putting things together. You're actually going to have a blueprint. It's going to be written down on paper so that you know what you're doing and so that others know what you're doing so that they can participate. So a lot of that is where it came from. We also need to hold, you know, white leadership accountable, right? And we need them to participate in this. And, you know, what I said, I had a talk yesterday, and you know, in Major League Soccer, we have some of the most powerful white men in North America. When you look at our owners and our ownership group, and I don't need those guys to march. I don't need them to protest. I need them to go to Capitol Hill to change legislation and all these types of things and modify policies such that we have some lasting and long-lasting impact. It's very, very important. So all that's part of, you know, that statement that you read, Troy, was part of an hour-long conversation and talk that I gave. In terms of what's happening in our universe, it's heartbreaking. It's when you see what's happening in the United States and Canada, when you think through all the things that have gone on. And I'll tell you, I woke up the Sunday after George Floyd's death. I woke up just disgusted and angry and sad. And it's not like I'm 41 years old, so it's not like I haven't experienced racism before. You know, we've been living this thing. George Floyd's not the first guy that's ever been killed. We've seen this and experienced. I will say that I felt something different within me, and I feel like I found my voice, as I hope, and I've seen people around the world, they found their voice as well. We just got to be smart about it. We have to be strategic about it. We got to write it down, and we've got to make some changes that are long lasting. And so, you know, that's where a lot of it came from.
I'm going to stay with you for a minute, Ali, because you're touching me in a way that sometimes I don't hear sport in this country touch me. In a matter of fact, I'm going to say a lot of the times I don't hear sport in this country touch me. If we're going to be honest, we might be honest all the way through. So maybe the question that I'm going to ask will take offline, which is, how long have you got left on your contract at Toronto FC? I think we could do with you over here. But two, you mentioned, and this is the bit that really touches me. You woke up disgusted, angry, and sad, and then you said that you felt something. What is it that you're feeling then? Do you think that this is a moment of change? Do you think that we are finally going to get equality somewhere along the line in sport first and foremost? But when I say sport, because we're connected to sport, but obviously globally, do you think that this may be a moment of change?
I think it has to be. And I think that if we are not optimistic, and if we don't believe that this moment will be a catalyst for change, then that's not a way to live. And we have to believe, and we have to do things, and we have to act. And I tell you, I woke up that Sunday disgusted, and I had to go through, so much. There was bureaucracy and red tape for me to get my own statement out in terms of within our organization and club. That's another story. But we got it out Sunday, so we did something. So when I talk about strategy and planning and those types of things, it's having these feelings. I woke up Sunday disgusted and angry and sorrowful, but doing something. We have to do something. So I got the statement out. Immediately that afternoon, what I did was I emailed every sporting director, general manager in Major League Soccer, and I said, if you care, if you support, if you want to do something, then I encourage you to reach out to your communications director and you get a statement out. And it wasn't such that you don't have to have a plan, right? I'm not a public policy expert. I'm not a civil rights attorney, but in the moment, we don't have the plan, but we need to acknowledge that there is some pain going on right now. There is some anger. And as leaders and as organizations, we need to be able to tell the Black community that we see you, we acknowledge you, we value, we may not feel what's happening and what you're going through, but we're saying we need to do something. And so you have to be visible and have a voice. Very important. And so, it's a long-winded way of saying it's having feelings and emotions. They're part of the process and part of the healing. But we got to create a plan and then work it and execute and really have so that a year from now, another person's not getting shot. 10 years from now, another person's not getting killed. Not shot, lynched. And so it's super important that we mobilize, we organize, and we're smart about what we do and how we do it. But
Ali, really appreciate
what happened. I do believe change will happen.
Thank you, Ali. I really appreciate that response, and it's important that we understand it, from really close to the situation. I've got friends out in America, and they are messaging me almost every single day, telling me, Troy, someone's been hung. A Black person has been hung. A Black person has lost their life again. And I don't want to do any disrespect to any person that may have lost their life over this recent period and back in history. But it seems like the talk around George Floyd has sparked something. And I agree with you, Ali, has sparked something in people's thought process. So whilst we won't name, because it could be it is a long list, we'll stick around, what we've got at the moment. And this is the actions that are coming out of George Floyd. Elaine, I wasn't going to come to you next, but I am. And I'll tell you the reason why I am is because Ali mentioned there about, messaging, sending a message out to all the, the people that lead the drive towards this, the people that have to put those messages out on their platforms. And for far too long in this country, we've we believe that they're very hollow. I've heard this all the time. The question I'm going to ask you is something I've heard a lot of the time. Is there a legal reason behind any company not producing a state, an acknowledgement, an understanding, and an appreciation of this situation that we're currently in globally? Because I hear it far too much. There's legal reasons why we can't say anything yet. Are they excuses, Elaine, or is that a thing?
I think many organizations feel that they're limited in making a public statement. I think if you look around you and see all the different types of organizations that have raised their voices to this issue, there is really no reason why you cannot make a statement of some kind in response to this. It has been said that it's a political issue. I don't believe that the rule of law is a political issue. This is a humanitarian issue. This is equality, and you cannot have the rule of law without equality. You cannot have justice without equality. So in my opinion, there are very, very limited circumstances where an organization cannot talk about this. We heard the Prime Minister make a comment about it, didn't we? So really, it comes down to people having an agreement, a consensus to make a statement. And I would encourage all organizations who feel moved by this to make a statement, because making a statement is important. You are acknowledging something that is real, that resonated, and that is a serious movement in our times. And it also gives you an opportunity to take stock of where you are and to really drive out systemic racism within your organization, and to move towards real equality. So I would hate to see that organizations miss that opportunity to do that for their employees, for their workforce, for their clients, and for the better of society.
Elaine, I'm probably going to come back to you in a minute, because I've seen some statements and I wonder the paper that they've been written on, because I'm sure that after they were written, they've been pushed into the bin, and at least we've done our bit. So I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Elaine, but thank you for that from a legal perspective. Rasheen, white Irish woman, how do you relate to Black Lives Matter?
You know, Troy, I've been very blessed in many ways. I came from Northern Ireland, which is predominantly a white culture. There isn't diversity. And when I came to London, probably the most diverse city in the world, to be able to work around to work with Kick Out, to be able to work around people like yourselves and colleagues like that, it's been a real education for me. And I think we have to talk about white privilege, and we have to talk about white leadership, and we have to say, this is about education now. This is about me educating myself. This is about every white person educating themselves around privilege, what that means, and to sit in uncomfortable spaces and have uncomfortable conversations, because that's where we are. Now, if we want to make change, revolution isn't a one-time event. It's going to take lots of different people doing lots of different things for a significant period of time. And the white community has to start learning to educate themselves around what that means, what Black Lives Matter, because what I've had people say to me, well, you know, every life matters. And I'm going, that's not what this is about. You know, educate yourself about what Black Lives Matters. Educate yourself about what systemic racism is like. Educate yourself around what white privilege is like. And only until you start to educate as a white person can you truly start to say, what part do we play? What action can I do? So it's very critical to me. It's very critical to this organisation for a long while, Troy, and we need to do more.
Thank you, Rasheen. I'm just delayed, so if you finish talking and you think Troy hasn't heard what you've said, I've heard everything, and I'm sure our audience has as well. So thank you very much for that. We've lost Kojo for a second, so those three powerful voices from a senior perspective have put their point of view across, and we'll grab Kojo in a minute. But I think now the young voices, it's really important. You've heard what kind of leadership is said in different departments, and it'll be nice now for leadership to hear your voices as well. Darnell, I'm going to start with you. A contribution to Black Lives Matters from your perspective, from a young person who has probably lived a slightly different life to someone like me. or has experienced difference in a different way to me, but I'm always empowered by how the young voices talk up about this topic. So you're the first young voice I'm going to put on the platform.
Black life matters to me means that we're still not seen. We're actually not seen. So if you look at me, I'm clearly a Black woman, but when I enter a room, I'm still not seen for who I am and what I carry. You know, my qualifications, my hard work, my passion, etc. The first thing people see is that we are not on the same level. So although this movement is great, and then when we look into sports and people taking the knee, etc., personally, it's just not good enough, because history shows that it's being done. It's just another viral way of doing it because of the current climate we live in. So what Ali said earlier, in the sense of, you know, we need a plan, and I need more action than these generic statements that we all know a PR team has sat down and spoken about. Because our generation, we're not hearing you guys because we're over it. We've seen it before. We've seen decades ago. We've seen our parents go through it, and realistically, we're not for it. We don't want to go through the same heartaches that our parents have gone through. And the great thing about this generation and the Generation Z that's coming up, which everyone in sports should be marketing to, because that's obviously the next generation, we have a platform now that we can put out what we need to put out. So I think what people need to do in regards to the sporting world, I think they need to look on these social media platforms, look at what Mayo was doing on his platform, even Georgia, and what Xander does behind the scenes, and see what are these young people doing, and let's get them in, let's have a conversation, and then what is the action we're going to do with that after, including them, not just taking our ideas and then putting your stance on it, and putting a white privilege stance on it. This is what we think. You know, we've heard in the news, diversity of thought. It's not good enough. Sit down, have a conversation with us, and let's sit down and make an action plan involving us. Let's collaborate with each other. It's not a one-sided thing. It's everyone. It's a problem for everyone. It's not a Black thing. We can't keep having these conversations like whether Black lives matter. We matter, okay? We all matter. We get that. And, you know, I'm only 25, but I know that decades ago, people were still having these same conversations. So the difference now is we have a platform and we can put out what we need to put out. But honestly and truly, I'm bored of the conversation. I want to see action. I want to see people like me in these positions, on these conferences, having real action. So realistically, I just need to see action.
Darnell, well, I'm just going to say to our audience, anyone listening here, I told you she had a powerful voice, and she played down, you know, in her introduction. But you've hit a couple of points there that I'm going to pick up with the rest of the group as well. So thank you so much for that. Mayowa, to you, another strong, powerful voice, as all our young people are, but someone who has struck me as, you know, you're not going to see these barriers, these alleged barriers, potential barriers, as anything that's going to stop you from being the person you are and striving to get to where you want to be. Same question. What is this period of time? What does Black Life Matters? How has it struck you? What does it mean to you? And where are we going with it?
The first place to probably start is what Ali touched on, about waking up in that moment. I'm feeling disgusted. And one of the words he used was tired. And if you speak to any Black person in the last 2-3 weeks, it's been mentally exhausting, draining, physically, spiritually. It takes everything out of you. And what you realize is this is a battle that has been going on for a very, 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 very long time. I think what's happened here, which has been different, is if you look at the way George Floyd was killed, like Ali spoke about, we've never seen anything like this before. That was a barbaric way of killing a man, which you don't even see in a graphic film. It was barbaric. And this was a grown man calling for his mother. And when you add that to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic where we've never been before, and everyone's in this very rare place of stillness where you can't go everywhere and you have to absorb everything around you, it does something to you because you realize, hold on, this actually happened. Everyone around the world saw this and thought to myself, this actually happened. So I think there's been a real awakening from it. And to touch on what Darnell said, yes, Black Lives Matter, Black lives has always mattered. But it's not just the contribution of Black people to this. The fact that Black Matters, Life Matters has stemmed from people looking at the situation and people realizing, you know what, Black people are not treated equally. The rebuttal you get to that is people saying things such as all lives matter, or what about this, what about that? And that tells you about the situation we're in today. And that's why, for me, I'm very passionate. If I can't say that a specific group who have been oppressed for so many years need some focus, something needs to be done here, without you saying, well, what about everyone else? You've highlighted what the issue is for me. And that's a societal thing. It's not just in sports, it's not just in cosmetic industry, it's everywhere you look. And that's why the moment we're in right now, where there's been an awakening and everyone's realized that, you know what, this needs to stop. It's about making sure that this isn't just a moment. This isn't just a 3-week period where companies realize that if they don't say anything, then they're going to be left out and it looks a certain way. We have to make sure that now people understand that the people that went before us and fought this fight, their fight can't go in vain. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for the generations coming after us. And when you look at it in sport, a lot of people always look at it and talk about, oh, it's about getting racism out the stands. And it's not that. It's the microaggressions of when you're in a room. It's the fact that you have to change yourself to fit a narrative. It's the fact that people can label you different to your white counterpart. The prime example is what Raheem Sterling talked about in 2018 when he looked at 2 of his younger teammates. Phil Foden bought his mother a house and it was praised in the media. Tosin bought his mother a house and he was lamented for it. And this is what we're talking about. It's not, racism isn't just abuse. Black Lives Matter is not just abuse or killing. It's about the systemic nature of a lot of the systems around us that are built to oppress Black people and keep Black people down. And within that, like what Rasheen spoke about, we have people in positions that have seen this, and because it's uncomfortable to talk about it, nothing's done. But now it's time to make people uncomfortable. It's time to make sure that people are having these conversations, and it's time to make sure that these conversations are happening on all of the platforms, whether that's big broadcasters, whether that's podcasts. It's making sure that people need to start listening to the uncomfortable truth, which is that Black people are being oppressed, and enough is enough for real now.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Very powerful, very, very powerful. I'm going to go back to our leaders. So we've had almost 2 and 2 at the moment. We've also got some questions coming in. And so what I would do is I'm going to pose those questions in a minute, but I'm going to get an opinion from everybody first of all. So at least we've all contributed at one stage with what we have to say, and then we'll take the questions. So Nick Silver and Carla Peniston, I've got your questions. We'll get those out in any second. Elaine, I'm going to ask you to take your work hat off for a second. And what has this period of time, how is it, not what, how is it? Because I know it has. How has it impacted on you as a Black woman, as a human being that stands up for rights? But take your work hat off, if you don't mind, and just tell me from a Elaine Banton perspective, experience.
Yeah. I was completely shocked and I was devastated. And I'm someone that, you know, is it's so enmeshed in me in terms of what I do. But as a Black woman who has felt discrimination, both overtly and indiscriminately, in terms of, you know, systemic racism and structural inequalities, I felt it personally myself. And of course, it's my work that I do these cases and I do this work. And 25 years ago, I wrote a 25,000-word dissertation on structural inequality and systemic racism. And for me to see that played out on television, a human life with no value, with no dignity, with no respect, it was shocking. And the fact that on that same day, on Memorial Day, the day that America celebrates veterans that have died, and many, many Black women and men are veterans in America. that he was killed in that way. And on that day also you had Amy Cooper, you know, chastising Christian Cooper, which is another type of everyday microaggression, racism that Black people face. The fact that those two events happened on one day was just extraordinary to me. And I think that it's right that because COVID, you know, the whole pandemic did bring the world to its knees, and then this occurred and everyone was watching, you could not ignore it. It shocked me to my core. And I think that we all felt those reverberations. And this has to be a moment. This has to be a moment of change. Every time that there is a significant change in society, whether it's the end of slavery, civil rights, apartheid, there has to be collective consciousness. And this moment has to be that moment now to tackle systemic racism and discrimination that we face. It has to be that moment to count.
Thank you, Elaine. Again, really, really powerful. Kojo, I know you've had a few technical issues, but it seems like you're with us. So hopefully you are and you can hear me all well and good. I suppose the focus, I do want to, you know, get a point from you about what this period of time has meant to you. Again, I know you normally reside in London, but you're not here at the moment. You're out in Ghana. But I also want a little bit about the work of Africa 10 as well, which I think, you know, we don't appreciate enough the kind of work and the education that is going on. And all of a sudden, when incidents like this happen, everyone says we need to be educated more. We need this, and, you know, we need to empower Black people more. We need to empower you know, organizations more. But from what I understand, your organization has been doing that anyway. So, you know, this is also a time to highlight some of the positive work that has been going on and that has had an impact, you know, globally. So first, just a brief about, you know, this period of time and what it's meant to you, but also give us a little background into Africa 10 and some of the, you know, the actual work that it's doing and the players that it's engaging and the impact that that's having back home.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. I think basically like all the people that have spoken, so I think like all the people that have spoken so far, clearly the brutal murder of George Floyd, you know, was such an impactful moment, not just for us as people, as Black people, but for the whole world. But as has been said by several of the other speakers, it didn't start with George Floyd. A few weeks earlier, you had Ahmaud Arbery. A few weeks before that, you had Breonna Taylor. And for those of us that have been of color and Black, this has been our lives. This has been our experience. Many people just suddenly had an awakening moment because they saw this on social media. But as people of color, we have lived this for, I mean, in my case, 40-something years. So it struck very deeply for me because I knew that could have been me or my friend or my brother or my cousin or anybody, you know, because once they see you as a Black man, they don't differentiate whether you're from Ghana or London or New York or whether you're a lawyer or a banker or a gang member. You're just a Black man and you're fair game. And that is the life that we've been living, and that's the life that suddenly many people are sort of getting some awareness around. I do agree very much with what all the other speakers have said. I agree with Ali that we need an intentional, focused plan. I'm not really getting too caught up in all the, you know, peace and love and hugginess, because it doesn't lead to any really intentional outcomes, because otherwise there will be a moment and it will pass, and then the systemic racism that's institutionalized in the UK, Europe, America, so on and so forth will just continue. So I very much agree with the other speakers that there has to be a plan with specific processes and outcomes for there to be any meaningful change. Otherwise, as someone like Darnell said, you still go to that room and they still just see you as a Black person and they have no interest in your substance or what you're bringing to the table. Until we have direct, specific change, nothing is going to change. So that's fantastic. Using example, for example, the EPL on everybody's shirts yesterday, Black Lives Matter, and I thought that's an incredible gesture and it's a great statement. Where is that going to lead? Because if we finish the season and next year everyone's jerseys, names are back on their jerseys at the start of next season and nothing has changed, then what does that really achieve? Nothing. So until we start seeing more minorities, more blacks in position of influence, in coaching, in ownership, in administration, then nothing has changed, because you simply can't have an industry where 35% or 30% of the players, and it's the players that make football, let's not get it confused, 30% of them are black, and then you look at management, administration, anything from leadership, and there's no black participation, or you start going down to 1 or 2%. And it's just simply unacceptable. And this is the systemic change that we seek. And until it is reflected in reality, it doesn't mean anything. It's nice that people have woken up, but as Ali and Darnell, and I think Elaine mentioned, and Maya, until we see this through to the end, to a process and an outcome, then for those of us as black people, it hasn't really achieved anything. It's just brought enlightenment, which is a big step, but we need outcomes, decisive and specific outcomes, for there to be real change. Otherwise, it's just talk, and talk means nothing. Regarding Africa 10, we started the organization a few years ago, and a lot of it was to lead to this. So we partnered with UCFB. Last year, we had about 10 young Africans getting scholarships, because a big belief for me, using the African continent as an example, was you have an African continent of 1 billion odd people, hundreds and hundreds of millions of them are all young, and football is the language of the continent. It unites across 54 countries, across all racial values, but we still have the same systemic issues. Where are the Black and African coaches? Where are the Black and African administrators? Where are the Black and African leaders in sport? So we sort of set out with the intention of helping to develop that ecosystem. I mean, we're very much in the early stages, but that is the bigger vision we started, and that's why we partnered with UCFB to train and develop more of coaches, administrators, and leaders from Africa or African descent, so they could have a direct influence, impact on the continent and in football globally.
Kojo, thank you. I hope you all managed to hear what Kojo was saying. It is still a little bit of a tough signal, but just bear with it, because the importance of the words that were being portrayed are probably the biggest learning, and it's the biggest understanding and appreciation, and that is going globally. There's more questions, and so it's good that we're getting questions coming up. But obviously, Georgia and Xander have been waiting quite a long time, but also I can tell listening in very keenly. So we'll make sure that your two contributions are now, and then we'll open up the floor, and then I'll ask a few more questions of you individually as well. So Georgia, first and foremost, I did a podcast with you yesterday with Redman TV. I've given you a shout out there, so I hope you help. Appreciate that later on. And you spoke about this topic. You had 3 people discussing this topic when maybe it wouldn't have been on the platform before. So, what's the importance of it? Why did you want to do it? Why did you feel that it was the right time to talk about a conversation that may have left people a little bit uncomfortable in terms of your viewing audience? Because they probably never heard it from that perspective before. So I think that would be a vital contribution to kind of like this conversation and debate as we have now.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Roisin said before. As a white woman, as a working class woman who plays football, you see it, but you never experience it firsthand, because it's never, it doesn't. But with the audience that we had at Wembley and Etihad, it's a Liverpool fan channel, a Liverpool Football Club fan channel. And with Liverpool kind of, I know Troy will hate this, but with Liverpool doing as well as they are, there's kind of a lot of eyes on there at the moment. And the fact is, Liverpool Football Club as a team is diverse. You've got Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah, Gini Wijnaldum. The list could go on the players that you've got there of different backgrounds. And the fact is, you cannot be a Liverpool fan and not care about this issue, because it affects these players. They're people. They're people at the end of the day. When they're not on that pitch, they're black people or they're mixed race people. These issues affect them. So you have to care if you care about the club. And I think we wanted to share the view of fans who experience this, because I think sometimes, like the whole sort of message of it was, some people don't have a choice in caring about Black Lives Matters. They don't have a choice because they have to. I'm fortunate enough, I get the choice. I can switch off from things, from systemic racism, from things like that, but I can't afford to because it affects everybody that I know. And it's the fact of putting that message onto a platform where people can have a choice of tuning into it. And if we get people who wouldn't necessarily hear that conversation to listen to these points of views, to people they can relate to fans, then it helps educate, and it helps, you know, like Roisin said, it's not, and it's not for black people who are getting oppressed to take on the weight as well of figuring out how to change, of figuring out ways of it's for people who aren't, who are in a position of privilege, to help also change these boardrooms and to change these audiences and things like that. So I think that's why it was so important for us to kind of put that onto a platform where an audience may never have heard of Kick It Out other than a t-shirt on a game day as everyone throws out. They don't know the work that's going on behind the scenes. So that's why we wanted to kind of put that out there, and why it's important for me to kind of showcase that.
Fantastic, Georgia. Brilliant. Thank you. Listen, we've got so many questions coming in. I don't think you're going to hear from me much, which is not great, to be honest, but we've got some really important and powerful questions coming in. So, Xander, I'm going to give you the platform and then we're going to go into these questions. So I've got a few as well that I may be able to fit in. You come from a very unique position, one that I'm really jealous of, and we're going to talk about it after we've finished, yeah? You have an insight into the England camp. You work with the likes of, and the minute I say these names, I think that I'm going to be joined in so much jealousy, Raheem Sterling and Marcus Rashford, you know, two very vibrant, great young black voices who in their own way have helped or are helping to make change. Talk to me about your work and what vibe do you get from those players? And I know obviously you wouldn't have been able to have been with them recently because the England camps have not been able to put on, but what vibe do you get from these players? Was it always that way? Did they always believe in kind of the messaging that they're doing now, and they're on two different scales? Or do you think they have been empowered by incidents lately and you know, the very fact that England were racially abused out in Montenegro last year, the very fact that the England players were racially abused out in Bulgaria, as two incidents alone? Yeah, just from your point of view, Xander.
Firstly, I think it stems from, I would say, from Gareth Southgate. Sorry, I shouldn't have said it like that.
That sums it. Sorry. Well, before we carry on, that's what sums it up for me. Name terms.
It stems from Gareth Southgate. He just gets it. I'm sure we've all seen him on TV. We've heard his quotes on particular topics, political topics. I think he holds a very strong opinion towards our black players, and this he takes priority on listening, and he gives players that license to speak up. In my experience, I've witnessed the staff, the core England staff, and the players come together and have a chat. And I joined England team a year before the World Cup in Russia, and there was so many meetings of how the players wanted to be represented and be perceived by everyone, fans, the media, etc. And Gareth allowed the players to talk openly, let the staff talk open, and talk about what they actually wanted out of that World Cup campaign. And not even just black players, but the likes of the captain, Harry Kane, being very strong towards changing perception of our players, and especially black players, and the scrutiny that the media put on the black players like Raheem. As the World Cup went through, and you know, there was moments where, you know, Raheem was ridiculed for not scoring as many goals as we expected. I think he then took it personally upon himself post World Cup to really stand up for himself. And I think that's not just as a person, but I think as a footballer. I think he really dedicated time to perfecting his game. Clearly, Pep and Southgate have done something to him because the game has changed dramatically and he's scoring goals. But I also think him being a leader, I know he's such a young lad, but he's actually a leader in that England team. And his messaging to the media, in interviews, to the wider team, I think has influenced every single player, every single staff member, and we're all there to support this movement to support black players and to support myself as a black mixed race staff member of the England team. So I think in my experience, that stemmed from Gareth Southgate, and filtered down to the experienced players like Raheem, and even white players like Harry Kane, who have really supported each player.
Vander, thank you very much. A unique insight into the England camp, and also, the first name terms of Gareth, which we're all pretty, not happy about, but we won't go there. But important conversation. Right. I'm now going to take you into the minds of the people that are absolutely listening to this, and hopefully have been empowered with every part of this conversation, the way I have, the way that you've introduced yourself, and the way that you've talked up some of the topics. And I'm going to take some of the questions. Some of them are very similar to mine. Some of them are going into the core. Ali, because we haven't heard from you for a long time, we're starting with you. And someone has just put here, what are your thoughts on the Rooney Rule, and do you believe in it?
Good question. The Rooney Rule. Wow. There's, just for reference, there's 32 teams in the NFL, and of those 32 teams, it's probably 70 to 75% of the player pool is black, and a great majority of the coaches in the NFL played the game at some point, at some level, whereas there's only 3 black coaches in the NFL, and which represents largely, 8, that's maybe 9%, right, of the coaches in the NFL are black. So you have this rule where you need to interview a black candidate. It's hard to believe in the rule, to be honest with you, because you see the outcome, and largely a lot of candidates are not getting they're not getting the jobs, and I think it's a good rule, but it has its flaws, and I really think that the NFL needs to create some milestones that they need to adhere to. They need to really look at, well, what percentage of black coaches should be in the NFL? What does that look like? And by what date should we have a greater percentage of black coaches in the NFL? So theoretically, yes, I believe in the Rooney Rule, but it's not having the impact that it's intended for. So in that sense, I think there needs to be an analysis on what other things can be done in order to increase the number of black coaches in the NFL. So the Rooney Rule, I'm supportive of, but it's not. It's only one pillar to keep the house up. There has to be 3 and 4 and 5 other pillars in order to try to address these things.
Thank you very much, Ali. I'm going to throw my 2 pennies worth in, if you don't mind, because we obviously looked at the Rooney Rule here in England, and when we were discussing, when I say we, football was discussing how can we implement it in our way, we've gone for a mandatory code. I'm going to bring Elaine in a minute, because we spoke about this. Elaine, was it 2014 when we were on another podcast, and we were discussing it then, and there's loopholes in it in this country. I agree with you about the pillars. What else are we doing to circle round the actual kind of implementation of it? I think there's a get out clause in it for clubs, for owners, that absolutely in England doesn't hold them accountable. So absolutely they're using that get out clause, and why wouldn't you? So I think we have to look at it again and reflect on how it's been administered and who we are holding to account once we put the rule in place. But Elaine, from a legal perspective, what does it mean to you? Is it fit for purpose? And obviously on the back of what Ali said, what more can we do to make it more prominent within sport?
Well, first of all, in English football, it's not mandatory for the Premier League. So you've got the highest echelon of the game. You're still able to appoint without transparency. So you cannot have fair recruitment without fair and open recruitment. So if you can just avoid it by just appointing someone without a procedure, there's no teeth to it. So it will make no difference whatsoever in the Premier League. And that's the first massive failing that needs to be addressed. It needs to apply to the Premier League, because that's how you set the tone. It has to come from the top down, and otherwise it just doesn't make change. I mean, the Rooney Rule has been working in America. It's been a rule that's been in effect for many, many years. And at other times, there have been more coaches and managers that have been appointed. At the moment, it's very low. And to me, that shows it's not working. The momentum is taking too long, and they need to look at other ways. For example, they need to look at drawing up targets and being more aggressive. Because if we just carry on adopting the Rooney Rule in the NFL, it may never really change, and it's far too slow. So I would definitely advocate for more stringent approach, such as setting targets and meeting those targets.
Troy, would you mind me picking up on what Elaine said?
Of course,
I 100% agree. And, I touched on the Rooney Rule as opposed to the NFL, but we also have a diversity initiative in Major League Soccer where clubs are required to interview what they qualify as a minority candidate, but it hasn't translated into results or success as it pertains to Black people. Our player pool is probably about 30% Black, whereas we've only, out of the 140 to 150 head coaches that have been appointed in the history of MLS, there have only been 6 that have been Black. There has never been a team president in the history of Major League Soccer that has been Black. There have only been 3 sporting directors or general managers in the history of Major League Soccer that have ever been Black. There is not one person in the executive staff of Major League Soccer's league office that is Black. So there's all these there's this data and these statistics, and we have these rules, and we know that it's just not working. Malcolm X has this quote where he says, sitting at the table doesn't make you a diner. You must be eating some of what's on that plate. And so we really need to address that in a very, very real and material way. Because as I said before, the one pillar isn't working and it's not keeping the house up. And so we have to have alternative strategies that will give us proper representation.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Yes, of course you can. Yeah, Mayo, sorry. Yeah.
One of my views, like everyone has mentioned about the Rooney Rule is, and Ali, you mentioned a great quote there. It goes back to what I've always said about when you look at the term diversity and inclusion. If you like, you can add someone who appears different to everyone else to your board. However, how inclusive is that person? Can they actually action anything? Can they actually bring their thought of mind to it? That's one key thing. 2, if you look at football, even if you apply the Rooney Rule to football, one of the things or the issues you have is people in their mind already think, you know what, well, I can't see anyone like me, so what's the likelihood of me getting that job? If you can't see it, you can't do it, which is one big issue. 2, if you've not got the resource or tools to actually equip yourself, you can't do it. If you look at Coach A licenses within the UK, you have to be invited to do that. A lot of former Black players have spoken about their issues with this in the game. So how can you end up going to become something like this in football? Even if you look at someone like Danny Rose, who is a Premier League international left back, he's come out and said, you know what, I wouldn't be interested in coaching because I can't see the access path there. So that tells you everything that we need to know about the Rooney Rule. Yes, you can kind of create an almost pathway, but if we look at the system and how the system operates, it's very easy for you to say, well, you know what, well, we've interviewed our one Black candidate, so, but you know what, we're just going to go with this person. So back to what Ali said, you do need more pillars to actually put things into place. The Premier League is 33% Black players, but if you look at things such as boards, coaches, directors of football, you won't see that representation there. And people do want to do these roles. I mean, Brian Bertrand came up this week and said when he finishes football, he wants to be a director of football. the only black director of football I know, because it's out there, is Les Ferdinand. And that is not a representation of football, the skill sets or the minds of a lot of people in football. So what other pillars can we put into place alongside the Rooney Rule that says, you know what, okay, not only have we got a pathway, these people are equipped to do these roles, and these people are given the access, because at the moment, it's just kind of a tick box here. You know what, if you check the interviews, I interviewed people from different races, but yeah, I just thought that on the day that person was better for the job. It's not strong enough. We need other things to work in conjunction with it.
And this is my thoughts, because I'm tired of saying the things that you've absolutely said, and I'm using tired in different contexts than the tired that we've used earlier on today. But just the bit you said, that if you can't see it, you can't be it. Does that apply, Darnell, Xander, Georgia? Does that still apply? Is that something that you think is going to hold you back? Or are you saying that, hold on, no, I get that, but ultimately I'm going to break through those barriers?
Okay, so from my... Sorry,
Darnell, go on.
For me personally, the type of person that I am and the way I've been brought up, no man is going to hold me back. And by man, I mean human. No one's going to hold me back, because that's not who I am. However, the reality is, it is sometimes disheartening when you do enter a room or you look at an organization and you don't see many people like you. And the reality is that when you do see somebody like you, certain people of color, black people especially, were put in certain positions, but we, like Maya said, we don't have power. So even when you are in those positions, like, I can't be inspired by you because you're not the type of person that I identify in myself. I'm the type of person that if I see something's wrong, I will say it and I'll feel no way about it. I'll do it respectfully, but I will say something. It seems like when black people do get in certain positions, or there is that token, and it tends to be a token black person in these organizations, they're not even themselves. They can't even be the black woman or the black man that they are. It goes even down to, like we've mentioned before, microaggressions. I can't wear a certain type of clothing, a certain type of hairstyle. Like, it starts there. And the reality is, I will always go for opportunities that I believe that I can go for. But the reality is, I want to go into that interview room and I'm not going to see people like me if I even get an interview because of my name. My name is Darnell. My surname doesn't look black, but my first name for sure is black. So already you've painted a picture of who I am. So I think for some of us, we do have that energy and that spark, because we haven't been shunned yet, because we're earlier in our careers. So I know we do have that hunger and desire to still enter these pools, enter these conversations, apply for these roles. But it's not actually about what we're willing to do. It's about the people on the other side. Are you going to look at my CV and see, actually, considering she only finished university maybe a year or two ago, she's done a lot. So she's done that in that space of time, with the training that we can offer her, the experience that she can gain through this organization. Wow, she can definitely be somewhere so quickly in 2 to 5 years with our help. That's not the mindset of these people seeing these CVs. That's not the mindset of these leaders, or this is the problem. The mindset, they don't see us. Like I said earlier, we're not seen. So it doesn't matter if I keep applying for these jobs, if I keep entering these conversations, I get invited to these conversations or on these platforms. If the people in these positions do not see us, it's not going to make a difference, as we've seen with the Rooney Rule. So it's more about, as we said previously, it's about action. The people who are in these roles right now, the roles that they can change things, it's the putting pressure on them. Do you see us? If we have opportunities out there, will you give, is it a level playing field where it's about not who you know? Because everyone always says that. It's about your network. It's about who you know, not what you know. But what that means in this day and age, it's about which white man you know, whose dad knew him from school when he was younger in that private school, or they have the same membership at that country club. That's what that means. It doesn't apply to me as a black woman. It doesn't apply to Maiwa or Xander as a black man, because unfortunately, our parents aren't sitting in those rooms. Our parents were the ones who are the key workers that we're celebrating right now, that we've never celebrated before. We're not in those same rooms as, these generational people who have these connections. So although I am the type of person that will, take an opportunity and run with it, the reality is the people of power, the people of position, what do they see, and will they really implement change?
Sorry, Donnell, I lost some of you, but the power that was coming out in your voice was unbelievable. And if you saw me smiling a little bit, it was only because I was resonating with everything that you were saying. So please, I hope anyone doesn't take that the wrong way. Xander, you also had a point
just
that I wanted to stress.
To add to that, but kind of from a different perspective, I'm working in a field which is very glamorous to young people. I meet a lot of young black boys and girls who ask me or look at me and think, well, you work for England because I'm wearing certain clothes, or have, a beard, or, wear certain trainers, or speak a certain way. And when I'm speaking to them young people, it's hard to kind of give them the best advice because generations are changing. Now, and in my experience, I have to say that my skill set and what I've been very good at has got me to the positions that I'm in now. Now, before I was at the FA and with England, I was doing the same job, but at Burnley Football Club. Now, if people are aware of the area and the town of Burnley, it's not very diverse at all. Now, I did not expect to get that job in a million years, just for that alone. I went for the interview, shown them my, catalogue, my array of work that I've done before. And I guess to them, I brought something different. I brought black to it. I brought modern, I brought new. I brought the fresh ideas that I'm used to and where I'm from. I'm from a city, I'm from Nottingham. So I just came with a different flavor, I guess, to Burnley. And I would say it's that experience or that mindset that they've never experienced before that I think they was attracted to. So now for me to be in that position to show off, to show what I can do is I think what Donnell's saying, that's the key, having that opportunity for the young person, for our next generation, to be in that position to even get to the interview and show their skills. We've got some skilled black boys and girls out there, but if they're not being in the interview rooms, how are they going to even be able to showcase that? I think for me now, after the back of talking to so many young people, it's how can I advise or how can I teach or build workshops to guide them into them positions. Now, in media, I think for black people, we have been the creators. We have been made to create entertainment for people.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's take away from entertainment and let's get into business and powers that be. It doesn't seem like we're getting them opportunities. So what can we do and what platforms can we create that gets young black girls and boys also in power of business and management, not just entertainment and me creating videos and making sure that it sounds good and looks good and make white people look great. How can we get people of our color, of our culture, of our community into the positions? Basically.
Fully understand it, Xander. Powerful. Thank you very much. I'm conscious that of time. I'm also conscious that there's some questions there that I haven't put out to Rasheen. We're going to talk about Take a Knee in just a second, but Kojo, here's one about your point about underrepresentation, and should the Rooney Rule be applied across sporting bodies, clubs across the UK and Europe and beyond? So is this something that you would like to see so that we can see that diverse nature of individuals that are actively trying to get into roles, actively trying to seek positions of prominence, but are absolutely being denied because of the color of their skin? Is this something that actually maybe if we apply a Rooney Rule type version across sports, that maybe we will see that change? Or are you very much leaning on what Ali and Mayo have said about maybe it's more than that, we need to see more than that?
No, I mean, I think just like I said, I think the Rooney Rule is as good as a reference, but I think we need to go way further. So if you want to call it Rooney Rule 2.0, for want of a better description, I think the strong thing out of Black Lives Matter is that we're able to have these conversations. So half the things we're saying now, most of us have known for years, when we weren't even given the voice to articulate it. And now we have the voice, we have to take that microphone, we have to work collectively and have a uniform plan to enforce these things. So if you take what Ali said, despite how clearly unrepresentational the MLS is or the NFL is. I follow US sports very strongly. They're still way ahead of soccer. So they have had Super Bowl winning coaches that have won. Tony Dungy won the NFL with the Indianapolis Colts. I think there's two of them. Mike Tomlinson won the NFL with the Super Bowl. With the Pittsburgh Steelers, won the Super Bowl. So you've had 2 or 3 black coaches win the NFL. You've had black coaches win the NBA. We've never had that in soccer. So ironically, as much as we're all in Europe shocked by the George Floyd moment and the violence of racism, the brutality of police racism in North America, I often argue that whilst we might not have the overt violence in Europe, the covert racism is actually worse, because if you want to use the data analysis and the numbers, there's no black managers of a high level comparatively in football. You have examples of massive racism. Even in the US, with all their racism, you couldn't have a football match where people are screaming monkey noise and throwing bananas. That wouldn't happen in the US, but it happens in Europe time and time again. And then the authorities allow it. And not only do they allow it, when it happens, you have football players earning £200,000 a week. You fine clubs £10,000 for racism. You're encouraging racists to say it's not an issue, because you're fining them £10,000 or £15,000 to clubs that are playing players £250,000 a week. So this has to be aggressively challenged. That's why it's in the Rooney Rule 2.0, not a better word, because we don't have time anymore, to Darnell's point. These changes have to happen now. We don't have another 10 years or 20 years to wait for these changes. And as Georgia pointed out, you look at the Premier League and look at the impact of those of Black or African descent in every single team. So Liverpool, who are currently by far the best team in the country, you can start from Trent Alexander-Arnold, VVD, Wijnaldum, Mane, Salah, and we can go to City, we can go to United, we can go across the board. So all these people are bringing impact, finances. They're basically dominating football in Europe, and yet no coaches, no representation. So we need to take the Rooney Rule 5 steps ahead and literally demand that, you have nothing against any of these players, but Lampard retires, becomes a great coach, Rooney. Anyway, where's the Drogbas? Where are the similar players that clearly have leadership qualities, clearly are legends of their clubs? They never get a look in. So next thing you know, Drogba's in Colorado and his mates in Chelsea are running big teams for us. And I think that in this moment, has given us the voice, and we will no longer accept lip service. It's just unacceptable. And as you said,
Kojo,
power lies with the players. They have to take
Kojo, sorry, did those players talk to you about that? Did they talk to you about the players that you have connected with Africa 10? Did they talk to you about lack of opportunity despite what they've done in the game?
Yeah, we have, as our forming ambassadors, we had George Weah, Jejo Kocha, Kanu, Kalisha Gwalia, and I could tell you stories. JJ will tell you stories of how he would score a goal for Frankfurt in the afternoon, win the match, have 60,000 fans cheering his name, and then in the evening he can't go to certain parts of the city because he'll be racially attacked. So this is the reality these guys have lived and continue to live, and it's just unacceptable for it to continue. And I think the moment that this BLM has given us is the voice, the microphone has been passed, and we have to sing from the rooftops for everyone to hear. And so this idea, we didn't know, we were uneducated, we weren't aware, it's just no longer acceptable, because we're going to put it loud and clear that this is what's going on. And we all love football because it's a beautiful game, and it's about 11 against 11 on a level playing field, and everyone can compete, and may the best man win. And right now, it's not meritocratic. It's steered against people of color, and that has to change. And we believe that the lovers of the beautiful game, the wider community and the vast majority, they're the ones who are going to have to push this through. It's not actually the black people who are going to push it, it's the white people and the non-blacks who actually care and can make a difference and come together and push through real change. And then you have to go further and even challenge the commentators, and as you said, as I kind of with Maya pointed out the comments of Raheem Sterling, but I'm sure a lot of the black people here will recognize we have seen for years when the commentators themselves are lazy. So they call players lazy, and they overwhelmingly call black players lazy. It's not a term that's used by chance. It's used for derogatory reasons, and we see it time and time and time again. And I'm sure you can do AI research or data analysis to check how this is done. And this is the kind of subliminal racism that continues, that has to be addressed so we can have this long-lasting change.
So, Joe, thank you very much for that really important elements to the conversation there. I'm obviously conscious of time, and whenever I've seen, witnessed, or been part of things like this, we never get to the solutions part. We never get to the part where actively, what do we think can affect change? So I want to make sure that we include that as well. But Rasheen and maybe Georgia, you might be able to answer this one. Rasheen, first, can you talk about the huge significance of the message which was sent out when the Premier League resumed, with everyone taking the knee? Was it important? Did it impact? Is it just lip service?
I think it did impact. I think it was really, it's the first time I've ever seen, after the blowing of a whistle, someone to take that stand and have the referees, the clubs and the players of every single Premier League club on a global scale, which will be, to have them say that and talk about Black Lives Matter I think is important. But it's like everything, it's one part of everything else. And just to refer back a wee bit, you know, we've all talked today about data. We've all talked today about, you know, action, things like that. You know, we know 30% of players in the leagues are from a black background or BME background, but we don't know the data. We know the top managers. I can't tell you, because I get asked this, how many people in the academy system are from a BME background? How many people at that at what levels? How many women are there at senior levels? How many people are on boards? Because that data isn't known, and it certainly isn't published. And if it is published, if we're going to move things forward, we talked about action today, then the thing I'd ask clubs and league to do is get that information and publish it, so that people on the outside can look at it and go, actually, you talk about this, but actually look at your employees. That doesn't reflect what you say. And where are the targets? How do we make sure? Because I see at the lower levels of the game diversity, but the more I see it move up, I don't see that diversity. I don't see it from a black point of view. I don't see it from a woman's point of view. I just don't see it. I'm sorry, but I don't. And if you want to talk about an action, that's one of the actions I think. So do I think taking the knee was really important? Yes. I think it sent out a signal. Yes, I do. I think it was fun, but it's only one step. And there has to be other really good actions that around. If we want to talk about data, how many black academy coaches are there? I can tell you I don't know, and I don't know anybody else who knows. And I work in the game. So until we know that, and until that data is published, we can't hold people to account. We can't say your club or your league or your football bodies is diverse, because no one can say it. I can tell you stuff before you can. The rooms that we've walked in looking around thinking, this isn't a diverse room. It's just anti-doping stuff. That's not published data. I feel very strongly that we should do that.
Rosie, who do you think? Can I just ask, Troy? Who do you think?
Go on. Yeah. You take my slot. Go on. That's fine.
Sorry. Who do you think would be who should be responsible of collating that data, or do you think it's a new? Well, I was just going to say, Xander, Kojo has put something in the chat as well, which actually asked almost the same question, but he's very direct. Why can't we get that data? Yeah,
it's very direct. Why can't we get that data? And it's literally because the game is not open to the problems that it has.
Troy, can I quick in there?
Yeah, can we make it quick? Because I'm sorry to really I just want to make sure we narrow down.
Myself and Darnell have been talking about something, and it stems from something that started in America recently, which was deemed the pull-up challenge. And essentially, within the cosmetic industry, what they said was, you know what, we understand there's a massive issue here. We're giving companies 72 hours to respond. Tell us at every level what's going on. The companies that weren't complicit, we know that you're probably trying to hide something. The companies that are complicit, we can hold you accountable, because a brief example, no one here goes to the gym and says, you know what, in a week's time, I want to have muscles coming up my neck. No, you have a plan and you're accountable. You take pictures, you have progress. And that's the key thing here. The PFA did it this week. They released some statistics talking about things within their organization, and they actually did a call out to other institutions. But I think that's a key thing that needs to happen. And again, that stems on from what's going now. People are actively calling out things they consume from, but I think it needs to happen within our community, from ourselves, from people at the top of these things saying that, you know what, release these figures. You have the figures, release them. And the people that don't release the figures, we will know what's going on. That would tell us enough. I think we need to be bold and say, you know what, everyone release the figures. Same thing with the boards this week in the UK. All of the boards, the data came out. I think it was 3 black people sit on the chief exec boards of sport within the UK, which is embarrassing. That's
just one.
Just one. Is that with all of them? I think there was two on UK athletics, right?
There were three in total. Three in total. 2 on one particular sporting board, one in terms of sport. Sorry. What I shouldn't have said. I didn't want you to quicken up your answer. I'm just being told about time, and I've often been on panels where someone tells me to describe something very quickly, and there's no way that you can. So actually, I feel that they're trying to mute my voice. I'm really sorry about that, but I'm being told that we've not got long left. But you know, it's pure love in when I say, yeah, could we quicken up a little bit? I'm really sorry about that. Georgia, just in a snapshot, your points about the knee. Was it powerful? Was it important?
Georgia, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hear me now? Yep. Just to go quickly off that, I think as a consumer, we have so much power, and people don't realise that until now. I know it from the city of Liverpool. If we don't have a publication, a news publication sold in the city, because as a consumer, we don't want that. You have a power as a consumer to take what you want, to see these companies, to see what they put out, to see these figures, and then go, okay, well, that's your standpoint. We don't want to consume you anymore. You have that power. You're the people who are putting money in people's pockets. And that's something I hope that kind of stems from it. But with taking a knee, it's so important as a kind of to raise awareness, like Roisin said, but it's the moments after. It's, you know, how do these broadcasters continue to talk about Black Lives Matter without getting tired that it's this issue that's carrying on? This issue will carry on. This issue will go past the season. It will be something. Yeah, the logo will still be on the kits. The Black Lives Matter won't be on after the first game. But how do you, as broadcasters, continue to talk about this without getting tired? Because the fact is, you're not in a place to feel tired, because it's not your movement or your struggle to feel tired about. Your duty is to now amplify these voices, and it's not good enough just having these diverse boards or these diverse panels for this 1 week while, you know, the topic's relevant. You have to keep this going, and it's their duty to have this, and it's our duty as consumers, as a white consumer, to continue to put pressure on and to make sure that it's not just other people's burden to carry. And we have to keep this pressure on, and we have a power as people who are consuming this media, who are putting money in pockets.
Thank you, Georgia. Elaine, I'm going to come to you, but I just wanted to read out a question. Then I'm going to come to you with something slightly different. Could it be possible that sports leagues, so it's something for us all to think about, maybe not answer, across the world, such as LMS and the Premier League, join together and go to the governments and the world organizations asking for change and more education? There was something here. If the 13th Amendment, the right to freedom, has been watered down, how can we educate the young people to change laws, have the same freedom in society and in fair society? Yeah, there's stuff there that we can talk about in terms of obviously kicking out what we do with the game changers and how we empower them to gain the knowledge, to understand and to appreciate their own voice and their power. Do we expect the EPL pre-game stances to continue? I think we've answered that one in a roundabout way. There was something else here. What do we think needs to take place to educate and change the mentality in these people in power, as the younger people in society will not be in a position of power for a good while yet? Again, it's something that we can discuss or think about, but we've got less than 10 minutes to go. How do we remove the barriers to entry for young people from diverse backgrounds to build a long career in the sports industry so that we can create change? I think something Xander said has kind of answered that in a way, in the way that you spoke about yourself, Xander. Elaine, my question to you, as I'm reading down these questions, and I'll read as I set you this task or question, and I'm going to have to bring our foreign secretary into play here, if you don't mind, who we're talking about take the knee, and his comments, amongst other comments, were And I'm going to bring Ali in on this point as well, just because the significance of Colin Kaepernick and what he'd done, 4 years ago, which basically has ended his career or may have restarted his career now, who knows. Firstly, to you though, this taking the knee move, it must have a broader history, he says, but it seems to be taken from the Game of Thrones.
No, it wasn't taken from Game of Thrones. Colin Kaepernick, as we know, started a very bold campaign as a lone voice, and at first he didn't kneel at first. He was actually, I think he was standing. But what he was told in terms of his protest was that he should kneel when the national anthem was being played, because that's a sign of respect, actually. And he was told that by a US veteran, Green Beret, ex-soldier, who advised him. He actually advised him. He wrote to Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick reached out to him and he advised him, take the knee because that will show respect. So that is where the knee comes from. It's actually a sign of respect. And I absolutely cannot see how anyone could find taking the knee as an objectionable form of protest. In history, people always object to how people protest. But as far as taking the knee goes, it's got to be one of the least offensive, yet one of the most powerful forms of protest there is. And it certainly doesn't come from Game of Thrones.
Elian, is there any way that you can write to the Foreign Secretary and just update his knowledge? I think that would be really good. He's never going to go public with anything.
It's on Google. It's on Google.
Yeah. Do you know the great thing? The great thing for me, I was on a podcast the other day. Sorry to butt in here, but one of the co-panelists just said, people talk about how do we educate ourselves? How do we find out? And he said, Google.com is free. And I'm just going to leave it out there. Google.com is free. Ali, the impact of the knee, Colin Kaepernick, everything that it's done against him as a human being, as he kneeled, stood, educate himself about rights. What impact has it had? What impact has him being denied a professional career? That's what I'm going to call it. Denied a professional career for making a stance. What impact has it had in the US and in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll say I'm really sorry for him. He hasn't been able to play the game that he loves and that he grew up playing. And, we all have dreams, when we're young about, who we want to become and what we want to accomplish. And for that to be stripped from him, I'm very sorry. That's heartbreaking. It's had a massive impact in that it has awoken a lot of Americans and Canadians in the sense of we have to stand for something, and we can't let this continue. And it evokes all the things that you read about and you watch and you listen to in terms of the civil rights movement in the 60s, within the United States. You have to, in order to effectuate change and to when there's systemic racism, when there's police brutality, when there's these huge issues of race and ethnicity that people don't want to address and that are so sensitive, that really rock the core, you have to be willing to put it on the line, and you have to be willing to go to jail. You have to be willing to march. You have to be willing to put your career on the line. And everyone has their own different personal situations and all these types of things, which in some way, shape, or form, it makes it easier or harder to contribute or be part of the cause. So most importantly, I'm proud for Colin Kaepernick for the knee that he took, and he sacrificed greatly. But I do believe that he gave a very clear example to a lot of young people around the world, that when you see something and it's not right, to act and to do something, and to protest. And I thought that was very important. It was kind of a modern day example of how to fight change, or how to encourage change. And so it was very powerful. And we're seeing it right now. I mean, when you if you listen to the statements that Roger Goodell made a few days ago, commissioner of the NFL, in terms of the NFL stance on Kaepernick and these types of things, it's powerful, and it's sad that we always have to look back. We have to say, well, I should have listened to you, or I didn't feel it that way, or I didn't know you meant it that way. You even listened to what Drew Brees, quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, and listen to the statements that he made a couple weeks ago. And thank God his teammates stood strong and rejected what he said. And finally, right, he has a little bit of perspective in terms of what's going on. So I think most importantly, it gives people a voice. They know that when you see wrong, to do something. And I hope that continues. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. To your point in terms of, do you believe that this is a moment of change? Like I said before, I do, and I have to believe that way. I hope all of us believe that.
Okay, so we're going to have to finish, but I want you all, while I read out a short statement, to think about one sentence that you'd like to leave everyone with. So I'm going to ask you all, and it has to be very short and sweet, unfortunately, because of the time. I also wanted just to put in here that there's two things here. One which will relate to you, Xander, and you can answer it in your response as your one sentence if you want. But it says, as a football coach in the UK, I have been to St George's Park for a seminar and was shocked to see the lack of diversity in staff there. What are your thoughts on the importance of diversity in the workplace? We'll keep that narrow. You can answer it, or you can give us that short statement that I'm going to ask from you. Then there was this: how did last night's PL broadcasters montage, so that is Sky Sports, by the way, of old movies with leading black actors make you feel? Was it a collective piece of work on a diversity group of professionals, or just something they did to tick a box? So whilst you guys think, just to finish off with, I've been on a chat, so if it looks like I wasn't listening, I promise you I was. And Rasheen, I hope you don't mind. I've made a commitment on behalf of Kick It Out.
Okay. I love it.
I did ask.
I am not his
finances,
boss. That is a journey. I'm not.
I did ask about finances, by the way, and I told them that we had limited funds, but the UCFB, along with Africa 10, want to create a scholarship pool to put full-time minds onto research and developing implement able solutions stemming from young minds that hopefully we as leaders can get behind and implement to affect actual change. We commit to working on a viable seed to fund and support this initiative, and we'll get details to everybody soon. So there you go. There's a commitment from 3 of the biggest organizations. I'm actually going to ask Ali, not just to make a commitment here, but I want that we can be influenced by your mind and your experiences out in Canada, as a general manager of a big football club, but also as soccer, but also as someone who understands the power of what is going on over there. So when we close screens here, Ali, if you don't mind that we stay in contact, because I think there's a lot of learning for us here in the UK, and hopefully we may be able to provide you with something as well that supports what you are doing outside. And if you are ever over in the UK, please make sure you stop by and knock on our door. We'd really, really appreciate it. So I'm going to go around the screen. I'm going to ask for we've given the firm commitment now. If anyone's got anything extra, that's brilliant. I'm just going to ask and just summarize in a really short sentence as I let our audience go after nearly an hour and 45 minutes. I can feel someone somewhere saying, Troy, you have gone on far too long. But the power in the voices has been more important to me than someone pressing the red button and actually taking this off of a live. So Xander, you are the first one in my screen. As you look there apprehensively and think, wow, how am I going to summarize this? It's over to you first.
I guess from my position, I have a responsibility, I have a duty to keep knocking on the door, especially at the FA with the England team. I think in response to the comments about SGP, I can totally agree. I can see it. For myself, I'm probably the only black mixed race staff member in the senior team. So I know recently there are meetings set up now with the powers that be at the FA, at St George's Park, at Wembley, where Black colleagues are allowed to come together, speak to the powers and demand, or at least have that forum to push and ask and knock on the door for change. So I think it's my duty to continue pushing that from my perspective, for my community, for my friends, for my colleagues, for my family. So I think in general, we all have to do that. Keep this message, keep marching, keep protesting. And that doesn't just mean getting out on the streets and outside Churchill and Downing Street. That means marching at work, marching at home, marching in any public sector.
We almost finished without mention of a statue. We almost finished, but Xander's just thrown it in there. So, but we'll talk. Xander, thank you very much. And of course, that what you're talking about, that support goes right through these boxes as well. You know, so anything that you need, make sure you reach out to all of us as well.
100%.
Darnell, I'm coming to you as the second one. Just some final thoughts in a shortened sentence, if you don't mind.
What I would say is, us as Black people, we're tired of fighting to have a seat at the table that our ancestors built. So I say this, we're building a new table where we're demanding seats for everybody. And I'll leave it as that.
I've got to say that I wasn't very good at woodwork or metalwork at school, so I'm happy to support in some way, but it may not be the building of it. But Darnell, powerful, absolutely powerful contribution, has been amazing. Really do thank you for that. Rasheen, again, some final thoughts.
I have to say, I think it's about education for the white community. Right, but I do think it is. I think it's trying to understand what white privilege means, trying to look at white frailty, trying to look at white supremacy. It's not our job. It's our job to educate ourselves.
Rasheen, can I cut in there? What does white privilege mean?
I think it's accepting the fact of what has gone on. It's educating ourselves as to what I, as a white person walking into a room, don't see, don't feel, don't hear, do not be discriminated against. That's what white privilege is to me. And we have to, Troy, you've taught me that. I've tried to teach myself that. My colleagues have taught it, and we have to continue to, because if you're only going to sit in a white room and talk to white people about this, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's about, we have to start doing, we have to start being uncomfortable. Let's just say it as it is. And I'm uncomfortable. I have to educate myself. I'm not saying I know it all, because I certainly don't. But we have to start saying, what do we not know? It's not for the Black community to educate us. We have to educate ourselves. We have to take responsibility. And I think that's very strong. And we have to start talking to our colleagues and start asking uncomfortable questions. And it's not going to be easy, and it'll not happen overnight. But if we don't make a commitment, what's the point?
Brilliant, thank you. Who's next up? Elaine, from your point of view, and you can keep it legal or you can keep it personal. I don't mind.
I want to do a bit of both, because first of all, education is important. I echo what Roshina said, but as people who are running businesses and making the difference, you need to wise up and understand that the business benefits of diversity are 100% proven. There is so much results and data on this. So the more diversity in your organization, the more diverse the people making your decisions, the more successful your business will be, the more innovative, the better at problem solving, and the more that you will attract and retain the best talent. There is no better reason to do that other than fairness. But if you add fairness, equality, and business benefits, it's a win-win-win-win. So I don't know what people are waiting for. Look at the reports, read the data. McKinsey, PwC, Work Foundation, this is out there in the public domain. So we want to see real change in the decision-making processes, on the boards, in management, where it counts. Because when they do that, everybody benefits and everybody wins.
You struck a chord there, Elaine. Absolutely amazing. For anyone that feels that when they look in the room, their best friends are there, and absolutely they're working and they have success, but it needs to be fair, it needs to be honest, and it needs to be accountable, and that's the thing probably for me, is that we need to start holding a lot of these businesses, industries accountable. It's the only way that we can start moving on. And Kojo's point about data is so important about that as well. Mayowa, You're up next.
For me, it's probably one statement broken down into 3 parts. The first bit will be, we all know right from wrong. We all know good and bad. We can argue till the cows come home about whether that's true or not, but it's the truth. We all know what's good and what's bad. Racism is everyone's issue. Off the back of that, it's not just a black issue. Racism is every issue. And off the back of that, utilize your platform, your position, or influence to help make that change. And that's the key one for me, because when you have a war, not one battle changes everything. You're fighting on different fields. People are going to be fighting this in government. People are going to be fighting this in change rooms across the country. People are going to be fighting this with their family members. Use your position, your influence, no matter where it is or what it is, to aid.
Thank you very much. Sorry if I missed the last part of that. Just got a message coming through. Georgia, very powerful, by the way, in terms of the way that you broke it down. So really appreciate that. Georgia, from your standpoint, some final thoughts.
Yeah, I agree completely with what Roisin and Maya was said, and just to kind of bring the two together is everybody has a platform, like you said, everybody has one, and I think sometimes it's misconstrued now in the digital age. We automatically think social media, or we automatically think who's got the biggest followings or things like that. Everybody has a platform and they all have different audiences, and you have the power, even though, like we said, you may be reiterating something that's been said. Your audience mightn't have heard that. Your audience might be hearing that for the first time. And the fact is, you need to now amplify Black voices, amplify more diverse voices, because your audience needs to hear that. And it mightn't be thousands, it might just be the people on your street, but they need to hear that, because they then take that to theirs, and it's the knock-on effect and the domino effect that's only going to start changing these rooms.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Kojo, I hope you can hear me. Final thoughts from you.
Yeah, I can hear you fine now. Yeah, I'd just like to echo what everybody else said. I think for me, the most important thing is to have a unified position, because if everyone goes off in the individual side of it, you don't have the same impact. So I think that some of what we touched on with this pledge, Troy, and with UCFB, but I think we want to come up with a unified strategy that we can all support, because that way you have real impacts. If you go off hundreds of thousands of units with different directions, it doesn't really achieve the same impact. So everybody has their role to play, but they should be working towards a collective strategy. That's how you'll see real meaningful change.
Fantastic, Kojo. Thank you. Ali, you're not quite the last word, because I have a question that I'm going to put out to everybody. And I think so far we've all been on the same lines almost. And some people may criticize us and say, well, actually, all you did is got a load of people on who said exactly the same thing. Well, you haven't said. You've all said it from a different perspective, and you've all said it from in a different way, because you're all impacted in a different way. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate the fact that we're all going to be impacted slightly differently, you know, no matter what is going on in society at the moment, whether it's through the pandemic or whether it's through Black Lives Matters or whether it's through other issues that you actually are not promoting publicly, you know. So it's important that we understand that. Ali, from your point of view, a final sentence, and then I'll put a kind of question out to everybody. Whoever wants to answer can. But yeah, it's important to hear from you again, Ali, just on your final thoughts on today, and maybe, you know, what it is that we need to do moving forward.
Yeah, final thoughts. Again, like Kojo said, I echo, you know, the thoughts of what everyone has mentioned. What I would try to say is for everyone to know that, you know, we all have a power, and you shouldn't let anyone tell you different. And to donate your time, your money, your resources, your intellect, your emotions, but we all have the power to donate, and it's important that we do. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you very much. So the final one, and it's not from anybody else but me. There's a term that has been thrown about for quite a number of years now. I'm not quite sure where it's come from. I did start to use it because everyone told me it was acceptable to do so. I quickly dropped it because I didn't feel it represented me. BAME. a term that is still used quite a lot, and I see some smiles and I see some, oh God, why has he gone there? And also think, but it's a topic that we have to discuss. You know, I see the English media use it, you know, probably 100 times in a short sentence, because it's easier to say BAME than actually call me a black person. I see many use the minority ethnic part because it's easy to drop us all into the same basket and label us so that you don't have to count who we are. That's my thoughts, and I could go quite deeper. Is there anyone that wants to take on the topic for or against as we finish off the conversation? So my esteemed panel.
Oh, I'm an against BAME, similar to you, Troy, because it allows people again to not see us. Call it what it is. Whatever people are presenting to you. So if I, for example, if I'm presenting to you gay rights, that's what I'm presenting to you. If I'm presenting to you Black lives, that is what I'm presenting to you. So address me as how I've presented it to you. So I agree. I'm not for the BAME, the people of color. Like, no, because then you segregate us again. I'm a Black person and I'm talking about Black issues that affect everybody. So let's address it for what it is. So I'm against BAME, the term BAME.
Yeah.
Do we feel that? Yes, of course you can, Elaine. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say BAME is this collective shorthand that people use to describe a community. There is no BAME person. They don't exist. White people exist. Black people exist. Asian people exist. You can break it down into the actual characteristic that makes sense. You know, if you're going to even analyze statistics, you have to break them down to have any proper purposive analysis. So BAME is just a shorthand. It doesn't mean anything. And we do need to relate to each other as human beings, as individuals, as a Black person, as a white person, you know, whatever race you identify with, you should be categorized as that race. That's the ideal. And I do think we are slowly moving away from that collective description as BAME.
As I look on the internet, or I don't read papers, but you know, read the news via the internet, I actually see the term increasing, because again, I think people feel uncomfortable about using the term Black to describe me as a human being, and so feel that if they can change it into an acronym, that would appease them rather than appease me. Any more thoughts? You don't have to, but it's just in case anyone had more thoughts. Georgia.
If I could chime in on that, from a media point of view, I think it's just lazy journalism. And I'm not saying that from someone who's got this vast amount of experience. I'm still in my second year of uni. I've just finished it. I've done work experience at Sky Sports News. But it's lazy journalism because there's no diversity in them rooms to say, well, do them people actually want to be called that? Has anyone interviewed him and said, you know, when we're addressing you as that, do you prefer if we use that term, BAME, or do you prefer that we use the term as a Black man, or do you prefer that we don't mention it? What do you prefer? Like what Darnell is saying, if someone is talking about one issue and that's how they want to talk about it, if I'm talking about a football issue, I'm a footballer in that moment. If I'm talking about an issue with the media, I'm a journalist in that moment. People are more than just one thing, but you need to be asking them how they want to be addressed.
Fantastic, brilliant, Georgia.
I agree.
I think it pertains to another conversation, which essentially is we need to stop trying to throw terminology to make the conversation about racism comfortable. It's not a comfortable conversation, and we need to have the conversation in its raw format. We can't keep trying to put these things that essentially make it a nice conversation, because there's going to be things that we discuss that make everyone uncomfortable. We need to call it as it is. If there's issues in terms that pertain to Black people, they've got to be called that. By grouping it as something, you almost make it a little bit more it becomes palatable. And this conversation is not that. It's a real conversation. It's something that affects communities. So therefore, we need to call it as it is. We need to call the game as we see the game.
Thank you. Rasheen, sorry, you were going to add to that.
I was just going to say, I agree with George. It is lazy journalism. I mean, if you see where I'm from, you know, you could say that Northern Ireland was made up of a white Christian community, that's homogenous. And that's literally what we were made of. But I'm a Catholic, right? And if you ask Catholics in Protestant Northern Ireland, do they see themselves as one homogenous group? You're damn right they don't. They certainly don't see themselves as that. They see themselves as difference. So it's that laziness of saying, we'll just put everybody together because that's what you look like to us. Well, we don't look like that. You know, my experience of growing up as a Catholic in Northern Ireland will be much different than my friend who grew up as a Protestant. And so you can't put everybody together in one homogenous group and say, well, you're all white Christians, because that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way.
Ali, finally, is it used out in the US, Canada? Is that term the one that is constantly bandied about for ease?
Not that I'm one man, so I don't speak for all, but it's not widely used in my from my experience. So not in the US nor Canada.
Thank you very much. Listen, I don't know about you. I've topped the scale at just 2 hours. We would have had people that have stayed on. We would have had people that have dropped off. I'm sure someone's going to have a go at me and say that I kept it too long. Even if it was for my own personal learning, I'm so grateful to the 8 of you for what you've contributed, for your voices, and hopefully for so many people's education and learning. I've gained mine. It's been a privilege to be able to put this on. UCFB, Kick It Out, and Africa 10 have made that slight commitment. We'll continue the conversations offline, but for now, Black Lives Matters, empowering the voices of young people. You have all done that in your own way. I've met some new people on here. Kojo, Ali, thank you so much for your contributions. They've been invaluable. Xander, Darnell, Rasheen, Elaine, Georgia, Mayoa. I'm so grateful I've remembered everyone's name because I'm tired now as well. Thank you so much. I'm sure the audience will thank you when they continue to watch this back online, but very, very grateful for all your time. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.